Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's had a good Thanksgiving. I'm Kevin Allen, and this is my usual podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, played for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And this is the Laidlaw and Allen Report, come to you twice a week, even over the holidays. Hope you had a good holiday, Tom.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think we need to do a little. I know we were talking before the show. We need to do a little review of our cooking, don't you think? I mean, if we don't touch on our cooking, we're
yeah. I mean, what did you have? I mean, that's the one day of the year I know where you allow yourself, and I'm going to put quotes around this because it's not splurging like normal human beings splurge, but you splurged a little bit, at least by your standards.
Right. So the recipe was the turkey as usual, and we were talking about. I don't do a whole lot with my turkey. I stuff it. Now my stuffing. Now here's a question for you too. Do we call it stuffing or dressing, or is both appropriate?
Well, I think it's interchangeable, but it's really dressing. So because people don't stuff the bird anymore. So
I stuff mine.
Hardly anybody does that anymore. So
okay, so yeah. I stuffed mine, and I that's the worst part of my meal. So we had some green beans with that we had in the air fryer. We had sweet potato not fries. We cubed up our sweet potatoes and did them in the air fryer as well. Our gravy, we've gotten a lot healthier. We take all those vegetables and throw them in the blender, and then your wife is. In fact, that was one of those ones that we laughed about. That I thought I invented that, but apparently that's been around for quite a while.
Yeah.
So that's what I make my gravy out of. So there's a little bit of gluten-free flour in that as well to thicken it up a little bit. And then we made a homemade apple pie. Now, normally I cheat on my apple pie. I get the shell all pre-made already. I always make the filling and everything. So I made my own this year. Again, we used gluten-free flour and almond flour mixed together, and then cut back half the amount of sugar on our apple. So it still turned out pretty good. We had Ron Greshner came over, took a plate home. And it's very difficult for him to give me a compliment, but he was actually went over the top complimenting on the meal. So it was good.
Well, your turkey, the photo you posted on Facebook, I mean, it looked golden brown. It looked like perfect. I mean, it looked like something out of the holiday catalog. I mean,
I'm bad now too because like the whole preparation thing, and I have to have it like centered in the plate and everything, looking good. So I'm getting carried away now. But
yeah. No, it looked good, and I'm sure you cleaned as you went along.
Yes. Yep. So, yep. Yeah. There's no leftover cleaning.
That's good. Well, we had a very small gathering compared to our normal, Allen extravaganzas that would have been, 13, 14 people. But it was just my wife and I and my daughter and her husband and then their kids. And my brother-in-law went as well. But usually we'd have had twice that much. But it was half and half. My wife doesn't eat meat, nor does my daughter. So, they cooked up some Brussels sprouts, and we had some vegetarian stuffing and all that kind of stuff. So it was good. It was good.
And your son-in-law deep fried the turkey?
He did deep fried it. This is the second year he's done that. What's interesting is the way that's done, and it almost sounds unsanitary, but I guess this is the way everyone does it. You save the oil from year to year. So you maintain the flavor, and they freeze the oil. So his father's been doing this for 10 years, my son-in-law's father, and they split up the oil. So he had to add some oil to it. Now this is the second year he's done it. So now he has his family oil that's froze every year. So
and what I loved was he came, and I'm going to steal this idea too. He came up with a name for his turkey.
He did. He named his turkey Evgeny,
nice,
like Malkin. We talked in the morning about Evgeny was causing problems because he was an Amish turkey and his legs were going every which way, and so when it came time to dip, it was hard to get Evgeny in the fryer. So you could we were watching outside. I didn't go out for the dipping, but I just when it looked out the window, and it was tough to fit his legs in and everything else. He was kind of splayed, So
I'm gonna have to come up with a name for Christmas turkey then.
Well, what's interesting is the first time I ever heard the idea of deep frying a turkey was actually from the now late NHL Hall of Fame defenseman Bill Gadsby. When I was writing this book, we spent a lot of hours together, and it was around Thanksgiving, and we were talking about Thanksgiving, and he goes, "Yeah, I can't wait to deep fry my turkey." Now this was 20 some years ago. I said, "Deep fry your turkey?" He goes, "Oh yeah, it's the only way to do it." And he goes, it's so moist and everything else. And, I never did it. And then finally I had one. And to be honest, everybody just raves about the taste of them. And I had it, and there's nothing, it's fine. Yeah. But I didn't think it was as spectacular as everyone else.
Well, you're spoiled by your wife. Like she probably cooked.
Well, and that's another issue too. And I said to her the other day, I've gotten so accustomed to her cooking for all these years that I don't really like anybody else's cooking.
Yeah, that's good.
So it makes it difficult for me if I'm, when I'm thinking to myself, I'd rather have my wife's, dressing. I'd rather have my wife's salad, and just because that's what we've had forever and a day. So anyway, let's talk about a few things. I know you want to talk about Johnny Boychuk, and we're going to get to him. I want to start us out though, because and I think this is a much bigger issue. All of us, I'm sure, watched some football from Thanksgiving on, and everybody's aware of the issues that the NFL has had with the virus for the last week. And big-time players have come down with the virus. They've had to move the Pittsburgh game to Tuesday, and people are not even sure they're going to play it then. Pittsburgh's an undefeated team. The Denver Broncos had all of their quarterbacks had to go into quarantine. Some of them weren't following the mask protocol, which caused them some issues and got them. They had to use a wide receiver who was in sales 2 months ago as their quarterback. And I'm sure he did the best he could, but he completed 1 of 9 passes. Now, I bring all this up because, the NFL is not in a bubble. When we played in the playoffs last year, we celebrated the terrific success the NHL had in putting on the postseason. But I'm trying to remind people we're not going back into a bubble.
Right.
When we play on January 1st or 15th or whenever it is, we're going to be doing what the NFL is doing. Players are going to go home and do their thing, and then they're going to come back to the rink. And, we're not playing 1 game a week.
Right.
We're playing 3 games and 4 games. So all of that said, we're going to have issues. Yep. And I just think that the fan base better get used to the idea that this is how it's going to be. Yep. College football has had issues because they're doing the same thing. Ohio State is undefeated. Yep. Their head coach has it. A lot of their players had it. They're saying they're only going to miss 1 game, but it's possible they could miss 2 games because of this. So, we have to sort of expect this to happen. And just to put it in perspective, Indy had the Indianapolis Colts had a big game against the Tennessee Titans. They were playing for first place in the AFC South. Both teams were 7-3. Jonathan Taylor, the Indianapolis Colts #1 running back, the top rookie performer from Wisconsin of last year, COVID-19, couldn't play. So let's put that to the NHL. We're playing in a week. The playoffs are on the line. You're the New York Rangers, and you lose.
Panarin.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting to me, I hear you totally. And I don't, it's hard to tell. I thought one of the things, the league did a fantastic job for the NHL. And I think the players did a fantastic job too. It seemed like adhering to the protocols. And that seems to be, from what I'm hearing in the NFL, that seems to be the problem. It's that the players haven't adhered to the protocols. So you get some teams, like in the Baltimore-Pittsburgh case, that game gets canceled, or not canceled, gets rescheduled. But the Denver game, they go ahead and play, even though they got the cases. And from what I hear, I was listening to Boomer Esiason this morning on his radio show. He said the difference is that in the Denver case, it was isolated. So the 4 quarterbacks, they're the ones that, whatever they did wrong, they weren't wearing the mask, but they were all together. It was just those 4 players. So they were isolated, and the rest of the team could play. In the case of Baltimore, I guess it was one of the strength coach or something didn't wear a mask and had symptoms and had exposed all the other players. So it was not contained. It was throughout the team. So they had to reschedule that game. So I guess I wonder, okay, will the NHL players act differently will they act better? And I don't know the answer to that, but
Yeah,
it
I don't.
seems to me that's a big part of it, right? That it's how the players conduct themselves, and that kind of not totally controls it, but it has a better chance of being controlled if they act properly.
Well, no one has more respect for the character of the people that play our sport than I do. I've covered the league a long time, and I've known a lot of players, and I like the character of the players that we have.
Yep.
But they're humans.
Yes.
And we were living in a bubble before, and it was a lot harder to cheat in that bubble.
Yep.
And this is going to be different. And you know what? Some of it may just be innocent. I get frustrated when I watch the football and I see people on the sideline that, are not adhering to the rules. And, and you see it in the stores too, the guys that think they're being clever. That's the thing I like, because they hang the thing below their nose and say, I'm covered. Yeah. But I get to breathe through my nose. And I'm thinking, you're being said, well, the same thing will be true. People will think, well, I'm okay just to go to the store and all that kind of stuff. And so, we're going to have issues because it's, we've talked about it before, but it's going to take us till, the end of the second quarter or the start of third quarter to get a vaccine that'll be in widespread use. And once that happens, I think we'll be home free. But, there's just going to be issues. And I almost bring it up, not that I'm suggesting that we shouldn't do it, that I just think we need to sort of expect this.
Yeah. And that's interesting to say it that way. And I agree 100%, because if based on all the stuff we're talking about with the NFL, if we kind of move back like 7 months, we wouldn't have accepted that then. We would have thought, wow, that's unbelievable. That's happening. Now we're now like, okay, it's acceptable. So.
Yes. And this will be happening to the guys that are the least likely people to suffer, catastrophic results from it. But you'd also don't want it to happen, because you don't want it to take home to their parents or all that kind of stuff as well. But I'm just bringing this up because the NFL has continued to chug along. Like they've had these issues, but we're still moving up toward a Super Bowl, and and I think the NHL would do that as well. But always now in society, the "I told you so" is always right above your head.
Yeah,
always. And I don't care what you do. I don't care what you do. You just because of social media. If there are two choices to make and you make one group is gonna be on you for this. So we're gonna have to accept as fans that it's not going to be perfect, that your team is going to lose players at inopportune times, and you're going to say, well, this just isn't fair. Yep. We lost that. They lost players, and when they played the Ottawa Senators twice and the Kings once, and we lost players when we had to play Tampa Bay.
And I agree with you, Kev, but it was interesting in using football as an example. The Denver coach came out and he was more critical of his own players, the four quarterbacks. Like he wasn't blaming, he wasn't like having some crutch or whatever. He said, no, that's the way it is. Our players messed up. It was our guys exposed, got whatever they did wrong and got exposed. But I still think you're right. I still think.
But I'm not talking about the coaches. I'm talking about the fans. The fans will say this wasn't fair, And I saw that Drew Lock, the quarterback on Denver Broncos, has apologized, and I think it had to do, if I understood correctly, and it was a little bit difficult. It had to do with the fact that the quarterbacks go into a room to do film, and they had not worn masks. Imagine too that the poor and we can relate a little bit to this, because it would be like, because we've seen it happen, bringing in a guy that hadn't played goal in a few years, and sticking him in, try to play a game. We had this guy in the Denver Broncos who, had played quarterback in college, but hadn't played in a while, and he was a wide receiver, and then had to give it a go.
Definitely. And you know what else is interesting about that whole thing? The league, there's somebody on the staff for Denver that had been a quarterback. He wasn't an active player, and they're going to try. Right. But the league wouldn't let him do that.
No.
And the theory was, and again, I got this from our boy Boomer Esiason this morning. The theory was that the league would be concerned then that in the future, teams would hire coaches and other staff members that were quarterbacks or other things, just so they had them there, and then they could use them when they want them. So it's like they're hiding players over there. So
right, expanding the roster
yes,
through the addition of coaches. Yeah. No, I mean, and you know what? I'm sure that would happen.
Totally, yeah. If they could like do it, if you don't do it, there's some wrong with you, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. If you ain't, what's the motto in the NHL? Nobody likes to say it public. You ain't cheating. You ain't trying.
Who said that? Spielman, I think, said that on the NFL on Sunday, and I thought it was pretty funny that he said that.
Yeah.
But here's another thing, Kev. We haven't. It's kind of gone away from the headlines. Is there hasn't been any more talk about the renegotiation of the collective bargaining agreement? They made the proposal, the league did to the players, and has there been any more stuff going on?
Well, I saw Pierre LeBrun, who's been covering it. I saw he had that there had been continuous talk, but nothing earth-shattering had happened. And I mean, I think this week is critical for a January 1st start, because you want to start to, getting your dates set for your physicals and all that kind of stuff. Because, everything will be different. You're going to have to sort of space out people coming in, and, you won't have your normal, gatherings, and, meetings are going to be different. It's, everything is going to have to be, and, that's the way it should be. I just was telling my wife about someone that I know who has put some rules on a visit home. He wants to come home to visit his family, and he has kids, and his sister was coming, and he talked about, hey, look, I will come home and I will visit, but I'm not coming at the same time that my sister comes and all her kids. And there needs to be 2 or 3 hours between us, and you're going to need to sanitize the house. Because, and I'm not just doing it, he said, we got to be careful. So
it's unfortunate, but you know what? I guess that's the way it has to be, right?
Yeah. Well, I only bring that up, not that that's right or wrong, but those are the kind of things that now the teams are going to, have to do. They're going to have to be, much more careful. Before we were dealing with just two dressing rooms in each arena. And we're concentrating on that. Now, we're going to have 31 different environments, 62.
And how are you going to feel if you're a player and you've got older relatives living with you or young kids, and now you're going to go out someplace where you could potentially be exposed, and then you come home again, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're going to have to make judgment calls. It's sort of like healthcare workers are making now, where you hear the stories that, the doctor or the nurse comes home, they change in the garage, they take all their clothes and put them in a basket. They go right to the washer, they throw them in. I've seen stories of some doctors, and nurses sleeping in their own rooms, the guest room. We might have to see that to play sports, but it's whatever you're comfortable with. I saw
that's the difference, right? Now we go back again, 7, 8, 9 months ago. We're a lot more comfortable with things now. And is that a bad thing, right? Is it bad that we're
it probably is. We're probably too comfortable. And all the news about the vaccines, like today, there's even more. Moderna is now in the pipeline to get the fast approval, and they could have vaccines by the end of this month for essential personnel. But we don't even know. This is the other issue too. Like, we think, okay, not, and I think there's, this is correct that, once we get vaccines in people, and that's the key. Like, they keep reminding us, there are vaccines, but what we need is vaccinations. Like, we can have 300 million vaccines, but if not everybody's taking it, it doesn't help.
Well, and that's interesting, right? Because I saw a poll that said that close to half the country says they're not going to take the vaccine right away.
Well, that's the problem. So what if that happens? What if the people just are afraid of it, because it's been expedited, and all the healthcare people, are saying, hey, it's fine. And but
sorry to interrupt you, Kev, but and I don't know the answer, so I'm really asking this question. That's my concern. How do you know that it's fine? There's been no long-term studies, so you just don't know what the long-term.
No, you don't. But you have to have, some faith, take some chances, and all the rest. And everyone will be different.
Yeah.
On how they view it. Some people are saying, "Oh, I'm just going to take the vaccine,"
right.
and others, will not. But my point on all that is that will impact whether or not we're going to be able to have fans in the arena. I mean, we will be able to have fans, but will people come? Will they be comfortable enough? If you're not getting the vaccine, if you're waiting to see how it goes with that first group,
Yeah,
so
I agree. No, I agree.
I saw something though that led me that said that most of the issues, the side effects and everything with a new drug, occur within the first month. It's like 95% of them or 97% of them, and they've already had that first month.
Yeah.
So it should be fine. Although that still leaves 5%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
No,
We know from being sports fans that upsets do occur, miracles happen, long shots pay off, or long shots come in. So it'll be interesting. All right, well let's move on to that now that we've totally confused everyone about
Dr. Laidlaw and Dr. Allen.
Yeah, practicing medicine without a license. No, but I mean, just to sum that all up, I bring that up just for. We have to be ready for this. We can't just say, "Oh, this is a disaster," the first time it happens, because this is going to happen.
Yep.
And you have to expect it and accept it. It's the price we're going to have to pay to have hockey played in season and to try to crown a champion in 2021. So we just have to accept it.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. And is it over the weekend or was it Friday that Johnny Boychuk with the Islanders had to retire because of the eye injury? Now, he came back and played after the ie injury, correct?
He did, a couple of games,
And then had to retire. I couldn't find out any details what had really happened, whether his vision was impaired or because I thought it was just a skate cut him around the eye. Was that what it was?
Yeah, he must have had vision issues, and he came back. He probably came back with the doctors telling him, you're putting yourself at risk, but that doesn't always stop.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me, and you and I were very close at the time too when Brian Berard, a client of mine, got hit in the eye. So Brian Berard had been drafted first overall by the Ottawa Senators, got traded to the Islanders, and then traded to Toronto. Game up in Ottawa, I think it was in Ottawa, correct? Right when Marian Hossa turned around and hit him in the eye,
right? Yeah,
and had a detached retina, and that was a scary time. I mean, a young guy, and now Boychuk's still bad, but Boychuk's 36 years old, so he's had a nice career already. Berard was really just getting going. He'd won Rookie of the Year, and had a great career ahead of him, and ultimately missed a whole year. And really, the eye, the sight in his eye was pretty much gone. And there's a whole process. He got insurance money that was all paid. And in my mind, I thought his career was done. In fact, I thought he was going to start working with me in the agent business. And he turned to me one day and said, no, he thought he could play. And he pretty much came back and played with one eye, which was pretty amazing just that he was able to make it back at all. But
Willie O'Ree, of course, played with one eye. And, you're able to do it, but he had taken, as I recall, Brian Berard had taken a settlement, and then had to pay back that money. So talk about playing for the love of the game.
Yeah, and it actually cost him money because he had to pay it back on a pre-tax basis, and then he had to pay tax on the earnings. So he was actually losing money. I think ultimately he became whole, and he played enough that he was able to remake all the money he had to pay back, insurance money. But that was quite a story. I remember when he said it to me first that he wanted to come back and play. I was like, are you crazy? Like, first of all, I didn't think he could play. And what had happened was Herb Brooks was going to be coaching the Olympic team for the, I can't remember which year it was, 2000?
2002, yeah.
Right. And so Herb and I had stayed close. Herb had coached me with the Rangers here. And I asked Herb if Brian could come to try out. Not necessarily he's going to come to the tryout, but he wasn't going to try out. In typical Herb fashion, he says, well, just make sure he understands he's not trying out for the team. I think he was kind of afraid that Brian was going to play well or something. But so Herb let him come to the training camp with the U.S. Olympic team. And I made sure I told a bunch of NHL scouts that we're going to be there anyways. That listen, that Brian's going to be there. I don't know if he can play or not, but he's going to go see how it goes. And that's when Don Maloney, actually, who I was roommates with the Rangers, was the assistant GM with the Rangers at the time. Saw him skating at the training camp and said, "This guy can play. He's still got it." So we signed him to the contract, and he had a good season here with the New York Rangers. So it was quite a story. I think he won the Masterton that year for coming back and for dedication to the sport and everything. So it was. I did not think when I first saw him, if you guys could have seen him when he first got the eye injury, his depth perception was gone. There's just eyesight in one eye. So he couldn't really walk through a doorway without like holding his hands up and making sure he didn't run into the door. And then to see him play in the National Hockey League a little while after that was quite an amazing story.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen on Twitter too, some of the fans have brought up some of the people that don't appreciate Lou Lamoriello have said things like, well, now Lou Lamoriello gets to put him on long-term IR and all that kind of stuff. But, I remind everyone what happened with Henrik Zetterberg in Detroit, who played for several years against doctors' advice, who said, you really shouldn't be playing. But he did anyway. So when he finally did say, all right, I just can't do it anymore.
What was it? Was it a knee issue with him?
No, it was a back issue, as I recall.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But who said, well, any doctor in the country would say, this is a medical thing. And I would guess this is the same with Boychuk. Could he try to play? Maybe, I don't know. But even if he could try to play and had chosen to play, that doesn't change the fact that he has an injury that he shouldn't be playing with.
Right. And to me, he's a 36-year-old guy. He's had a long career.
Right.
I'm sure he's got a young family probably and everything. He's probably thinking, okay, listen, I need to be smart here. And the comment, like the Lou Lamoriello stuff, and I'm sure you feel the same way with this. Lou's hard and everything. Lou runs business as a business, but he cared. The guys that are on his team, and that's his family. I mean, if you're not on his team, you're not his family. But if you're on his team, the guy's great. So
yeah, absolutely. And he has ethics and.
Yeah.
But if the rules are there, he'll certainly take advantage of them. But that's for sure. And it's a shame that has to happen to it. No one wants to go out like that. I mean, your career ended with an injury.
My back. And it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but we've talked about this in the past. Part of what makes you a player, to whatever anybody that's successful makes to a certain level, has to have that attitude. Like, I'm going. I'm not going to stop, to get to the peak of your performance. But it's also the thing that kind of hurts you later on in your career, right? So I'd hurt my back, and I had one of my great coaches. It was assistant coach Rick Wilson with the LA Kings, and he was a player with Montreal. He'd had a back problem, and he was great to me. We'd skate around before practice, and I was being stubborn. I was still that same old guy that just said, "I'm not getting on the training table. We go drink a beer. That's going to fix it." Mentality, and he said, "Tom, you've got to change your thinking. You got to stretch. You got to work. Do different workouts." And I just wouldn't. Because it's so stubborn. I said, "No, this is the way I've made it, and I'm not going to change it." And I look back at that now. It's like, Tom, I have some great friends now that are Navy SEALs, and we did a podcast one time. We talked about that kind of subject where, you want to have one plan. You got plan A, and you're going to finish it. And it's great to have that mentality. But what they've learned in their training is that you also need to be able to say, okay, yes, plan A is still to get from this point to that point, but you need to be flexible enough to make some changes along the way. And I wish I'd had that advice. Well, I did get that advice from Rick Wilson back then, but I didn't want to take it. But it is tough when your career comes and you can't play anymore. I remember walking out, even through all that stuff, all the back injuries and all that kinds of stuff, walking out of the Great Western Forum after Rogie Vachon told me I wasn't playing anymore. And I was like, I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming that morning when I got up. I was going to have that meeting with him. I knew what he was going to tell me. But still, once he told me and I walked out of the arena, man, that was the weirdest feeling because I'd been on a team my whole life. So it's the same thing with Johnny Boychuk. He's 36 years old. He's always been on a team. So.
Yeah, no, it's staggering. I don't certainly understand that feeling, but I think it's similar to the fact when I realized that my career as covering the National Hockey League for USA Today after 34 seasons was over, and it just wow, suddenly I'm not the national writer. I'm on my own. I'm going to figure out a different way to. Right.
And you realize, I think when you're doing it. Right. I don't know how you were, but I felt like, okay, I was a hockey player. That was part of who I was, part of who you were as a writer. But then once you get away from it, you realize, well, there's other things in life too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you get on with life, and that, what you were back then doesn't define who you are. It was part of your life, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, but there's a psychology that you need to overcome. I did want to bring up too, because I think this is an interesting point, how far the rehabbing of injuries and the long-term maintenance of your body has come. Like, I remember Mario Lemieux, of course, had back injuries. Everyone remembers the stories. If you're older, that you had to have someone lace up his skates to play in those championship years with the Pittsburgh Penguins in the early '90s. And one time, they wanted. This was my understanding, and I don't recall. It's been so long now exactly how it worked, but I think in general terms they wanted a Mario Lemieux to embrace a year-long regimen of making his back stronger. And I remember Bob Johnson, in his own style, the coach there, the late Bob Johnson, sent a message to Mario through the use of the media, which he liked to do. Right. So he walks into a press conference, and we're all standing there, and he goes, "You ever go to the zoo?" He says to everybody standing there. He says, "You go to the zoo and you watch the lions, King of the Beasts," he said. "King of the Beasts, love the lions, love to go watch. What did they do the first thing when they get up in the morning? They stretch. They stretch, they stretch, they stretch. That's why they're the kings of the beast. They know how to take care of their bodies."
That's good.
They stretch, they stretch, they stretch. And everybody started laughing. But, that was the way he would,
That is funny. That's pretty good.
King of the Beasts, the lions, they stretch every morning when they get up. First thing they do. So anyway, we're done stretching your mental capacities here with our show. We'll be back later in the week. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. Thanks for tuning in.
See you Wednesday, guys.